As much as one tries to infuse stories with humor and cheer, this one shows us the dire situation for the preservation of our natural rights and how precarious those rights are in the face of government. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV, and as you know, the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is unequivocal, and it is very clear. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed by any level of government, federal, state, county, local, it doesn't matter. And in fact, even if the Constitution didn't allow for us to keep and bear arms, we would still have the inherent right to do so. It is part of our nature. Doesn't matter what a government crafter says. Yet, despite all that, it is happening again. A few months ago, I reported that half of Colorado sheriffs would not enforce a proposed anti-gun red flag bill if it were to pass in the state of Colorado. And now, numerous sheriffs in various counties in Washington state are defying political commands that they enforce a new law called Initiative 1369, which Ben McDonald describes well for reason. Under the new law, someone buying a semi-automatic rifle has to be at least 21 years old, pass a stricter gun check, take a safety training course, and complete a 10-day waiting period. The law does not impose a retroactive ban on people under 21 owning such guns, but it does increase the restrictions on where they can possess them. Washingtonians under 21 can only have a gun in their homes, in a fixed place of business, or on real property under their control. So much for the right to keep and bear arms not being infringed, and say farewell to the constitutional prohibition against ex post facto laws. Not only does this statute blatantly infringe on the right to keep and bear arms, it criminalizes such activity for those people who acted legally prior to the statute and who still are under 21 today. And the mandate that state residents under 21 keep their guns in their homes or on real property under their control or in a business changes the rules under which this cadre of the population can operate. It punishes them for activity that formerly was legal. And that's not all. And people of all ages are supposed to comply with strict new storage requirements. A person who stores or leaves a firearm in a location where the person knows or reasonably should know that a prohibited person may gain access to the firearm is now, quote, guilty of community endangerment due to unsafe storage of a firearm, end quote, if, quote, a prohibited person, end quote, accesses the gun and uses it. McDonald correctly notes that this fusillade of government mandates puts civilly minded people who might want to get their firearms in emergency situations at great risk. But the politicians behind this law show such unbridled contempt for their beneath-the-heel underlings that it is even more stunning than that. While the new law stipulates that nothing in it, quote, mandates how or where a firearm must be stored, it also says that the only way to surely avoid unsafe storage penalties is through either secure gun storage or a trigger lock or similar device that is designed to prevent the unauthorized use or discharge of the firearm. Secure gun storage is defined as locked box, gun safe, or other secure locked storage space designed to prevent unauthorized use or discharge of a firearm. So this statute does mandate where and how people will store their firearms. Otherwise, they will be punished. Do these political predators actually think that people can't see these towering contradictions? Well, some people can see these contradictions, and they are not blind to what is being done to people's rights. Many county sheriffs in Washington state have said that they will not enforce these terrible lines of code. The Spokesman Review reports that Stevens County Sheriff Brad Menke and his deputies, quote, won't be issuing citations or making custodial arrests for most suspected violations short of an obviously mentally ill person under 21 displaying a semi-automatic rifle in a dangerous manner. When my 19-year-old daughter can't carry a .22 rifle off our property, but we can send her off to war, I don't agree with that at all, Menke told the Chinook Observer. And Menke and his Stevens County deputies are not alone.
I understand there's an argument that the sheriff has to follow the rule of law. And I would say generally that's true, unless I feel as an elected sheriff, because I'm a constitutional sheriff under the Washington State Constitution, I believe I have the authority and right to protect the rights of the citizens of Klickitat County that I serve.
These people swore oaths to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution, and yet Washington State Initiative 1369 is an attack on the right to keep and bear arms and imposes ex post facto laws on people under 21, people who 200 years ago and today are members of the militia, and who, regardless of any written so-called law coming from any government body, have an inherent right to self-protection. Yet McDonald sheds light on how inimical some Washington state bureaucrats are to these very rights. In February, Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson stated that sheriffs who do not enforce the law will be held liable if a prohibited person obtains a gun because of the lawman's inaction. First of all, Mr. Ferguson, the criminals who are out there don't care about the statutes that are passed to supposedly stop them from getting guns. That's why prohibition doesn't work. And second, Mr. Ferguson, how would you and others in that hierarchy of insults and institutions created through forced expropriation of people's earnings like to be held liable for what you do? All the statutes and regulations you pass and enforce that harm others. We're talking about all of these lines of demarcation that should be drawn and should be made very clear right now between you people who would mess with other people's rights and the people who would respect their neighbors' rights, their natural rights, the rights with which they are born. These lines of demarcation are clear, Mr. Ferguson, and we're picking up on it and spreading the word about this. Not only are those sheriffs out there in Washington state doing noble things by saying they will not abide, they're showing your massive, massive disrespect for individual rights and the inherent nature of your neighbor's ability to defend himself or herself. And this is the type of thing that we have to make sure we continue to discuss generation upon generation, because every 7 to 10 years or so, young people growing up in environments that you create, Mr. Ferguson, could forget. So hats off to those sheriffs who are reminding people about the inherent right to self-defense and reminding people that they are not supposed to be infringing upon those rights. We will see whether or not these lines of demarcation become even starker, Mr. Ferguson. But right now, we applaud those sheriffs in Washington state who show us the nobility of recognizing their neighbors' rights to self-defense. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please tell other people about this, because as I said, if we don't spread the word, other people will either be unaware of this or young people will never know it. For MRC-TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.